Hi, I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me for this 30-minute yoga practice. I'm seated here upon a yoga mat. If you don't happen to have one, just find a place in your house that's got some carpeting, or maybe you've got a rug, not one that's going to slip out from underneath you, but a sturdy rug. A place that isn't too hard, too slick. I have 2 yoga blocks. A great substitute for that would be 2 thick books. And I do have a folded blanket available to me up here next to my sleeping dog. And by the way, a sleeping dog is a pretty great prop if you've got one or can borrow one. I can grab it if I need it, but those are great to have to seat ourselves up on, or maybe even pad our knees. We'll start today, as you've maybe noticed, I'm closer to the ground. Instead of standing, we'll start in a child's pose, and that looks different on all of us. So let's review a few options. If it's uncomfortable, which it is for many of us, to sit your hips all the way back onto your heels, fear not. Walk a little bit forward, take your arms with you to support you. You could even use one of your blocks or books to rest your forehead on. And maybe you start to think about sinking those hips towards your heels, but I'm not interested in you forcing not just this pose, but any posture. You're the expert of your own body, and I am the guide. Now, wherever your hips have settled, we use this as a little place to curl up and to turn the arrows of attention inward instead of distractedly outward. That's the biggest challenge. Assuming the shape is one thing, but really landing, really letting go of an incoming text message or a to-do list, that is the advanced practice. You can close your eyes here if you want to. Some people will want their knees a little bit wider. Some people like their knees about hip distance. And then let's turn our attention to our breath. If it's possible, your inhales and exhales will start to come through your nose. If that's not available, no worries. I just want you to fully experience your inhale and fully experience your exhale. Let that be enough for the next 20 seconds. Bring yourself onto hands and knees. This could be a really good moment to take your folded blanket and slide it underneath your knees. Right now, it's likely your toe knuckles are touching or your feet are pretty close to each other. Let's slide it so that our shins are parallel to the long edges of our mat. And we'll oomph into our arms. So it's tempting to collapse into our shoulder girdle. Let's not do that. Push into the ground until you feel yourself fill out that space in between your shoulder blades. That's called protraction of your shoulder blades. And if you think about it, let's do that collapse one more time together and then correct it by pushing into the ground. There are little muscles like fingers around your ribs. This is trunk stability. This is core work that we're up to, actually, with what we're doing right now. And it's a really great reminder when we get to things like plank positions. First, let's do this. Take your right arm up. Swoop it underneath you. You'll come to the outside of your right shoulder. I prop up on my left fingertips. Some of us will slide a block or a book or a folded blanket underneath the right side of our head. And then let's come back to that awareness of breathing while we're here, swooping. Then we come back to center. Remind ourselves of oomping into our arms once again. And it's our left arm that swoops up, and then we'll swoop it underneath us, and we'll come to the outside of our left shoulder, outside of our left head. Not that you have 2 heads, but you get what I mean. And then you can prop up onto your right fingertips here. A folded blanket or maybe your block or book under your head might help. And we pause. unswoop. I'm not sure that that's a real word, but it is today. And let's once again plant our hands and feel our shoulders over our wrists. So we're not too far back and we're not so far forward that it feels like it's too much on our wrist. Fill out that area in between your shoulder blades. Let's curl our toes under because I feel like this can help as we isolate our pelvis. So you'll get a little sassy and take your butt to the sky, which will be good intel when we do a down dog. And then imagine that you've got your tail between your legs and tuck that tailbone and round a bit in your back. And then we'll get sassy and let our tailbone go to the sky. And then our tail between our legs, and we tuck our tailbone. Keep the oomph in your arms as you go back and forth here, freeing up your pelvis. Make sure that you've got plenty of engagement, oomphin', and not collapsing in that upper back. Just lower body movement here. Now come to a neutral spine, so we don't have our tail between our legs and we're not sassy. Well, we might be, but we don't have that sassiness in our pelvis. And then bring your forearms onto your mat so that they are parallel to the long edges of your mat. Find the oomph into your arms. And now just slide one leg and then the other back slowly until you can lower onto your belly and uncurl your toes. We design a Sphinx pose from here. Begin by tractioning your elbows towards you and feeling your heart move through the gateway of your arms, as if your shoulder blades now are gliding towards one another, because they actually are. We want to engage our legs. So press into the tops of your feet, let your kneecaps lift. This is something we want to encourage in the upper back. So you could almost feel like you're trying to tuck that tail between your legs again in terms of your pelvis, so that we move the mobility work into our upper back, into that shoulder blades gliding towards each other. The other thing we want to be wary of is we want the shoulder blade area to be the star of the show, and our chin throwing to the sky is going to try to take the lead role. We don't want that. Let your chin be parallel to the ground. And let's just pause and feel these feels for a couple of moments. Now we'll lower down and slide our hands next to our floating ribs. This makes it even more tempting for our neck to be the star of the show, and we don't want that. So let your elbows draw in towards your ribs a little bit. Engage your legs pressing into the tops of your feet. Think tail between your legs with your tailbone tucking, although it's not really going to do that because the ground is there. And then let's get the traction that we found in Sphinx, but here in this little bit of a cobra position. If you feel like, oof, this is just not working for me, and my low back is a little bit feeling this, come back to Sphinx anytime. This is a great way to go. So either cobra pose or your Sphinx pose. If you happen to be in Sphinx, when we lower down now, bring your hands next to your ribs as if you were doing that cobra. We will all curl our toes under. This is core work. Ready? We will come to all fours. And from all fours, remember when we were sassy, and I said this is going to come in handy? Take that sass into your tailbone and let it pull you all the way up and back, pushing solidly into your arms for a down dog. Once we get to down dog, step your feet as wide as your mat, come high on your tiptoes and bend your knees. You're welcome to adjust your hands, but we want to push so that we feel the longest, strongest torso on all four sides that we can create. Then we will walk our feet to our hands and arrive towards the front edge of our mat with our feet hip distance and parallel. Bring your hands onto your thighs, your ankles or shins, maybe your thighs, but we'll slide up and inhale and pause. Now maybe hands on thighs would be a really good place to be. When we fold, even right now we're folding in and we came up into it. This is not a rounding. This is where if you have your hands on your thighs, traction, some length, and a hip hinge. It's even a little bit of sass, like we found on our hands and knees. Then we'll exhale and fold in and take this length with us and slide our hands down. Doesn't matter how close to the ground. Firm your belly, inhale. Rise, reach, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Then we stand in our first mountain pose, feet hip distance, Soft bend in our knees so we don't feel locked out. Our palms turn away from each other, but that happens in our shoulder joint and in our upper back, just like our conversation in Sphinx, and our chin stays parallel to the ground. Inhale, arms out and up, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips and hands onto your thighs, maybe your shins or your ankles. Inhale, glide your hands up, doesn't matter how far. Exhale, fold it back in. Now bend your knees deeply enough that your palms get flat onto the ground, and when they do, step back into down dog, keep pushing the ground away, like when we did this first. You might have your feet as wide as your mat, or they can be hip distance. I like to be on my tiptoes with a bend in my knees, so I know that my priority is to keep that length in my spine. Then let's shift our shoulders over our wrists. Remember, we rehearsed this. Bring your knees down, but this time let your knees be a little further back in space than when we were playing around on our hands and knees. We're not collapsed. We've got that filled out feeling in between our shoulder blades. Shift a little bit forward, and in one piece, and as slowly as you can, bring yourself all the way down onto your belly. Uncurl your toes, press into the tops of your feet, either a Sphinx pose or maybe a Cobra pose. Then lower yourself down, curl your toes under, and bring yourself onto all fours in one chunk. Then find the sass in your tailbone, let it take you all the way to down dog. Keep the bend in your knees if you feel like things are rounding in your spine, which they often are. And then we'll walk our feet forward to our hands. We arrive hip distance and parallel. Slide your hands up, inhale, elevate your heart. Slide your hands down, exhale, folding but lengthening. And then inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V. We stand in our mountain with our palms facing out. Let's do that again. Inhale, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips and hands to your thighs or your shins or your ankles. Glide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Bend your knees deeply enough that your palms go flat. Then we design our down dog by pushing the ground away, letting the sass in our sit bones take our hips to the sky. Come forward, shoulders over wrists, bring your knees down in a kickstand, firm your belly. We lower all the way down onto the ground, uncurl your toes for your Sphinx or your Cobra pose. And then lower down, curl your toes under, we come through all fours. We find the sass in our tailbone, that takes us to down dog. And from our down dog, walk forward, feet come to your hands, hip distance and parallel, glide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Glide your hands down, exhale, we hinge and fold, and then we inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V. We'll pause in our mountain, our palms facing out. Prop organizing. Take your two books or blocks to either side of your mat, still facing this short front edge of our mat. Come back to your mountain pose stance, so feet hip distance. Turn your palms to face out. This time we add a chair pose. When we add a chair, it's not a tuck of our tailbone. We're not too sassy. We want to keep just the right amount of sass as we sit down into a chair that isn't there. Let's just do that much first and then stand and float our arms along our sides. One more time, chair, sitting into a chair that isn't there. And then we straighten our legs and float our arms along our side. Adding on, chair pose. Then exhale, hinge at your hips and hands to your thighs, shins, or ankles. Inhale, slide your hands up, bend your knees deeply, palms make their way flat. We step back to down dog, and don't forget our sass. Lift your right leg back behind you and step that right foot forward. Most of us will need to help it along. Find your two blocks or books, trot them into the mix, and pause here on the ball of your left foot, your back foot, standing into this lunge on our right foot. And instead of swinging our hips out to the right, let's hug that right hip underneath us. We want to keep length in our spine as if Sphinx pose somehow found us where we are right now. Left hand stays put on our block, Right arm swings open to the sky, but right hip does not swing out to the side if we can help it. Imagine making the longest, most broad wingspan between your left hand on your block and your right arm up to the sky that you can. Anytime you prefer, back knee down in these lunges, that's great too. 3 moments. We'll unwind our right hand to our block. Then just take both blocks off the side of your mat so they're not in the way as we step to a down dog. So palms go flat, we step it back. You might stay here. You might come forward and shift shoulders over wrists. Bring your knees, your kickstand down. Lower carefully all the way to the ground. Uncurl your toes for your cobra or sphinx pose. Then lower down, curl your toes under. In one piece, we come to all fours. And then we get our sass. And that takes us to down dog. In down dog, lift your left leg. Step that left foot forward. Help it along if it's helpful. And then trot your 2 blocks onto either side of that left foot. You might heel toe your left foot over to the left a little bit. That will help so that that left hip is not swinging out to the left too much. We want to think of almost inviting our sphinx pose to this pose. And once we feel solid on the ball of our right foot, or maybe with that right back knee down, we will keep our right hand on our block and spin open with our left arm, not our left hip, but our left arm, and pause here, increasing our wingspan as we go. Then we unwind our left hand onto our block, take both blocks off the side of our mat so we can easily orchestrate a down dog. From our down dog, walk forward, feet come to your hands, hip distance and parallel. Glide your hands up, inhale, lift your heart. Slide your hands down, exhale, we fold in. Let's take our chair, so sit back into a chair that isn't there, thumbs to the sky, V, and then stand it up. Arms along your side, you take your mountain pose and we pause. Chair pose, once again, is our launch. Exhale, hands to your thighs or shins or ankles. Slide your hands up, inhale, palms go flat, so bend your knees as deeply as you need to get there. We find our sass even here. Lift your right leg behind you. Once again, step it forward, help it along, and we trot our 2 blocks on either side of this lunge. But we'll change this up now. Left foot, back foot goes flat. Our front leg's gonna straighten, but let's walk our right foot over to the right a little bit. Measure where it makes sense for our blocks to be. Mine are tall because I'm not interested in rounding over my straight leg. And once I straighten my leg, it's trickier to keep a long spine, wouldn't you say? Before we add anything, we'll take a moment to really refine from the ground up. Press that right big toe mound into your mat. Let your right leg feel straight, not locked, but straight. And then outer of our back foot is solid in our mat, and our back arch feels lifted and alive. Shoulder blades feel as though they're sliding down our back, not into our ears. And then we'll add left hand staying on our block and right arm up to the sky in a twist here. 3 moments. Although our right arm is reaching up to the sky, our right hip is trying not to follow. Unless you're getting feedback that your low back hurts and it helps to swing your right hip out, you're the expert. I'm the guide. Now we'll bring our right hand onto our block and bend our front knee. Spin on your back toes as you do that. And take both blocks off to the side so they're out of our way as we make our way to a down dog. Oomph into your arms a lot. Decide to stay here or visit the child's pose we started in, or we shift to a plank with our shoulders over our wrists, and then we bring our knees down onto our mat and come all the way to the ground into a cobra or a sphinx pose here. Lower down, curl your toes under. Remember, it's all fours. And then sass takes us to down dog. Once we're in down dog, lift your left leg behind you. Step that left foot forward, help it along. First, it's a lunge for a moment, and then we carve out of our lunge our pyramid. So back foot flat, left leg straightens and might walk over to the left a little bit, and then we get our priority of a long spine into the mix on this side. Blocks can be tall. We're not interested in trying to fold close to our leg, nor are we interested in getting close to the ground here. We'll pause. 20 seconds just in the stretch. And now we add a twist. Right hand stays on your block. Left arm floats up to the sky. Remember, not hip swinging out, chest turning out. And then a pause. So you could say that we're here in a bit of a meditation in this shape. So an inward turn as we reach out. 3 moments. Now unravel. Bring your left hand onto your block, bend your left knee, and spin on your right toes. Take your blocks off the sides of your mat, palms go flat. We step it into downward facing dog. And then let's shift shoulders over wrists, bring our knees down on our mat, super slowly all the way onto the ground. And then Sphinx pose for a moment together. Sphinx pose, however, will turn into a plank on our forearms just for a moment. So let's do this together. Oomph into your arms, curl your toes under. Keep your knees down and just elevate your hips. That might be the extent of it, that's plenty. Maybe you take your knees off your mat as well for 3, and 2, and 1. Then we'll bring our knees down, bring our bellies down. Either stay with our Sphinx pose or slide our hands back and make it a cobra pose. Curl your toes under. Feel that core work we just found in the plank on our forearms as we come to all fours. And then once we're on all fours, the sass takes us to down dog. Our right leg lifts behind us and we step forward, lower our left knee, our back knee, and start to create a single pigeon here. So I sit on my block. You might do the same. And then I start it there, sitting on my block with my right hip, with a bent left knee, or right knee, and then I slide my left leg back. And it might be that it ends up kind of over here a little bit. That's okay. I want you to be careful of your knee. And I like to take my other Booker block, tall, and then I curl my left toes, back toes under, spin that back thigh to face the ground, and I've got a pretty delicious stretch on the front of my back leg and in the hip of my right leg, my front leg. It could be that you're on your hands, you might fold it forward here. I find that curling my right toes back is helpful for my right knee. There's a place where you'll feel a stretch and a place where we can also allow ourselves to be in a little bit of a meditation for 30 seconds here. Pigeon pose. To come out of it, let's lean to our right so that we take the burden off of this right knee, and it makes it a little easier to slide that left leg forward. Take your blocks off the side of your mat. You don't have to go to down dog and lift the leg and step it through if you kind of feel like, yeah, it's good, I'm close to the ground now. But you could. You could take your down dog, lift your left leg, step it through, and then let's all sit on a block folded blanket, something a little over to the left as we design it. You might lose that thing that you're sitting on as we go. I wouldn't be in a rush to go there. Back leg, right leg straightens out behind us a little bit. We take our hands maybe on a second block. And then curl your back toes under and really think about spinning that back thigh bone to the ground. That will help target this hip flexor stretch in your right leg, your back leg. If you want to go lower to the ground and fold it, that's fine. But let's get still and quiet once again in this side of our pigeon pose stretch. A little bit of pseudo fancy sequencing here. Lean to your left, take that block out from underneath, and then you could keep this right knee bent this left knee bent and take your right leg up and over and sit in a twist this way. Many of us are going to need to lean back and straighten our left leg and then take this twist this way. So left leg can be straight or left leg can be bent. Everybody's body's different. And then we simply turn to the right and your left elbow can hook this right knee. Some of you will take your left elbow outside your right thigh. Every inhale, let's grow tall. Every exhale, let's just explore gently, lovingly, a twist. Gently, carefully unwind. Take both legs out in front of you, and maybe this side will design it a little bit differently. So you can step your left leg over your straight right leg. That might be where it stays. Or bend your right heel towards your butt, only if it makes sense in your body. Left hand behind you, right arm up, and then it can be as much of a hug as you'd like, or as much of a hook of your right tricep outside your left thigh as you would like. On this side, unwind. Place your feet on your mat hip distance. Lie down on your back. Place a hand on your heart and a hand on your low belly. Either stay here or shimmy your shoulder blades underneath you with your fingers facing the sky like you're a little robot. And gently lift your hips like we're doing almost a Sphinx pose, or as if both of your legs were doing the same stretch as the back leg in your pigeon pose for a bridge. We'll lower our hips to our mat. Walk our feet wide. Let our arms come along our side. Knock knee your knees. If it feels good, straighten one leg and then the other leg, or just stay bent-legged. And it is our Shavasana final meditation. I encourage you to stay here in your Shavasana final meditation as long as you would like. If it's time, bend your knees into your chest and gently roll to either side. Come up to any comfortable way to sit. It might be cross-legged, it might be upon one of your blocks or props, maybe on your heels. Palms up or down, and then let's take our hands to our heart. And pause for a moment of gratitude. Grateful for one thing, to have the health and the opportunity to do this together. I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for practicing with me. I look forward to us doing this again together soon.